Welcome back. I'm Dr. G. This is the series on happiness in relationships, and this section is the fourth part of the organization subsection. And this one is called Intra versus Inter realities or dynamics. And with that, we will wrap up the last of the four sections under organization. So I understand where basically the organization of a relationship is comes in handy in terms of understanding how we can get to the happiness in a relationship. So we have talked so far about multiple aspects of the organization. This one is about the difference between the kind of an inner reality versus interpersonal reality of within a relationship. So, what I would like to get your attention to is that difficulty that people have in kind of balancing these two realities with one another. And again, many times we don't pay attention to to the difficulty of that task. We think it's a kind of a very simple, like a natural thing that people engage in. And as a result of that misconception about the difficulty of this task, a lot of times people just kind of misread each other. So they may look at a person's actions or reactions and determine that this must be a very clear message to the partner versus understanding that, wait a minute, maybe it's not meant as a message to me. Maybe it is simply what I'm observing is kind of from outside in. I'm just seeing what's happening in my partner, and they're reacting more to their own internal world and what they're dealing with in the moment than to me. That's a big difference. So let me give you an example. So let's say uh, you may have an accident, right? Let's say there's an auto accident, and people get out of the car. Let's say they come out alive, and however they're injured and this and that. And let's say it's just two people, a couple basically with their kids, a couple of kids, and they get out alive and they're okay, but they're injured, right? Now each person is going to react differently to the situation, to their own internal shock that they're experiencing, and to their partner. Now, one partner may be, kind of highly in need of attention in that situation. Like they need to have the family members check in with each other and confirm that everything is okay. That's their way of taking care of their responsibility in the moment. Whereas the other partner may have a different reaction to the situation. So rather than affirming and confirming with every single person that everything is okay, they may be highly activated internally where they have to first actually just kind of um, grasp what's going on, like internally come together and compose themselves and make sure that they don't have a surrealistic uh, reaction to the situation, that they feel like the world is continuing, they're still alive, everything is going to be fine. And that's that part of the inner process of dealing with the trauma to pull themselves back together. So within that time frame, maybe it takes few seconds, maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, maybe a minute for the person to compose himself or herself and pull themselves back together, which is more of an internal process before they can actually attend to others. And if, in fact, after they have taken care of themselves more psychologically, put themselves back together, once they get into that interpersonal space to check in on others, there may be further triggers. For instance, they may see their child, God forbid, suffering, and then have a very intense reaction to that in terms of, maybe feel terrified or feel completely helpless in that situation, or completely doubtful, kind of guilt ridden, that they, as a parent, are incapable of, for instance, fixing something right there and then there's still that inner struggle of dealing with those emotions and feelings, and then paying attention to the situation at hand. And right there may be a little bit of a clash between these two partners. One that has so much external focus on what's going on, interpersonal focus, and that's where more or less actually they derive their energy to remain focused and concentrate on the task at hand and kind of get things done and fixed and move forward, versus this other person who has more of an internal focus and struggling with that inner trauma and inner world and kind of discrepancy and disparity, and needs time to pull themselves together. And right there may be that kind of misreading and misperception, such as a person who is internally focused may feel overwhelmed and kind of overburdened by their partner, who is, they may feel like is imposing their needs and values and the rule, if you will, on the situation, and is too aggressive in the situation. Instead of regarding this other person's external focus as their MO and their way of dealing with the situation and handling it as best as they can, and vice versa. The person who has the external focus may feel like, what's going on with my partner? Why is he or she so aloof or distanced or uncaring or kind of selfish, or whatever labels we come up with in that moment, or again think of the other person as incapable. So we immediately may put labels on each other, which comes from our judgments based on our own inner experience in the situation, and kind of regardless and irrespective of the inner experience of the other person. This is one extreme example in terms of a, let's say, car accident, auto accident, but also very similar situations exist within other areas of, again, kind of clashes and conflicts and discrepancies, such as, again, something like a party. At a party, in-laws may get into it with each other in terms of disagreeing on something. There may be at times a political discussion going on that drives people apart. There are at times other areas of discord between people. Again, we may miss the point of the fact that we have to manage two different worlds at the same time. One is the way we are reacting to our own needs, feelings, wishes, desires, fantasies, memories, goals, aspirations, etc. And the other one, how do we react to other people's needs and expectations and desires and kind of approaches within the same time frame, especially when it comes to difficult situations. A lot of times we don't have to deal with this, and it is much easier to balance that type of a conflict if things are good. Let's say on a nice weekend, Saturday, Sunday, whatnot, where people have plenty of time, they don't have pressing issues to take care of, they have taken care of a few of their tasks for the day, so they're just kind of in a relaxed mood. And let's say a couple of people just lying on the couch, maybe watching a TV or movie, and there may be something comes up and they disagree on it, but they're much more capable of managing that situation and moving forward, kind of using tolerance, maybe forgive a little bit and not take things too seriously, in order to understand both themselves, how they're reacting in the situation, and the partner, and just kind of get over that because they're not under highly stressful demands from the situation. But other times it may not be that easily possible for them to move forward from that conflict because there's a highly stressful situation. So lastly, what I would like to do is to remind you that because of this internal organizational part of a relationship, you want to uh, remain aware of the fact that this difficulty exists all the time. So whenever something happens, remind yourself that we are dealing with two different realities at the same time, and be a little bit more tolerant toward the fact to both yourself that you're dealing with this um, very stressful task to manage and balance your own inner reality with that from that happens between you and your environment and between you and people around you, as well as this discrepancy within your partner, that they have to navigate and balance this and negotiate these two different realities at the same time, and use your tolerance and, again, like I mentioned, understanding, if in fact sometimes even forgiveness, to allow for that time for this person and yourself to overcome that situational stress. Give yourselves and the other person a chance to sort out through this difficulty before you make a final judgment. And in fact, check with one another. At times what you can say, I noticed that this affected you very highly. What was going on in you, within you, when that happened? Can you tell me more about it? How did you deal with it internally? I'm interested in that. Because you observed how they dealt with it externally, but you may not be aware how they dealt with it internally. So that's a good question to ask your partner in order to get to know them better. And if they can do that for you as well, then you both will be able to understand, again, this part of the organization of the relationship, and how each person has kind of anchored themselves within a very specific position and role, as it relates to how they deal with the stress in their relationship. So think about it and stay tuned for our next segment on functionality.